Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Fishing System in Food Wars World. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Quick update. The series What If Transmigrated in Bleach World is now on hold, since we've caught up with the author. So now, I will be using the second most popular among the fanfics on the previous poll as the replacement for the series What If Transmigrated in Bleach World. As such, please vote in the poll and let me know which story you'd like to see next. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 151, IGO's Biotope 1, The Lifeline of the Human World. A few days passed in a flash. Yuki soon found himself on a plane bound for the IGO's Biotope 1, which was established on an incredibly dangerous island. The island was vast, home to a multitude of powerful beasts. It was also the headquarters of the IGO, a place from which massive quantities of food were shipped to the entire human world each year. It could be said that this place was the very lifeline of the human world. If anything were to happen here, while it wouldn't lead to a complete famine, it would undoubtedly trigger a massive food crisis. Chef Yuki, welcome to IGO Biotope 1. When Yuki stepped off the plane, Mansam was already there waiting for him. For Mansam, the third in command of the entire IGO, to come out for a personal greeting showed just how much importance they placed on Yuki. It's good to finally meet you, Director Mansam, Yuki said with a friendly smile. Are you saying I'm handsome? P.S. Mansam is known for this classic line, every time you call him Mansam, he thinks you're calling him handsome. Hearing Yuki speak, Mansam immediately dropped his most classic line. Yes, you are very handsome. Unlike others, who would just give a perfunctory reply, Yuki's agreement was direct and sincere. He felt that Mansam truly deserved the compliment. It wasn't about his appearance, but his character. All in all, Yuki genuinely admired the man. Mansam was thoroughly surprised. While Yuki wasn't the first to say it, he could tell that the words were heartfelt. Most others who said it were just his own subordinates trying to flatter him. Many would just ignore the question entirely. Mansam could always tell when someone was lying. Yuki's answer, however, caught him completely off guard. He was well aware of his own appearance. Forget handsome, his face could more accurately be described as ferocious. Director Mansam is indeed very handsome. After all, you manage so much here at the IGO. Your contributions to the human world are more than worthy of the word handsome. Yuki explained with a smile. His words caused the goodwill in Mansam's eyes to deepen. It wasn't just because Yuki acknowledged his contributions. More importantly, by acknowledging them and seeing his actions as righteous, it meant Yuki was on their side. That was why Mansam's friendly gaze intensified. It's all small stuff. I can't compare to the president. He's the one who built the IGO from the ground up. Come on, let's go have a look around. The matches in the underground arena won't start for a little while, Mansam said with a laugh. He felt that compared to his own contributions, Ichiryu was the one who deserved the most respect. After all, it was Ichiryu who had founded the IGO and united the vast majority of human nations into a great, peaceful alliance. A feat that had required immense effort. Led by Mansam, Yuki began to tour the research facilities and various projects of Biotope 1. Aside from a few biological weapons, the IGO's research was mostly focused on how to increase the yield of various ingredients and render them harmless. The potion Yuki had obtained before, which could pacify poultry and eliminate their will to fight even as they were being captured and killed, was a product of IGO research. He saw all sorts of ingredients here. Though their capture levels weren't high, many didn't even have a level, they were what fed tens of billions of people. Quantity was the key. The world of Toriko didn't lack for food, but in the past, wars between humans had managed to create a great famine in a world of plenty. Take Midora, he was born into a world so dark that he was raised on pig feed. A perfectly good world of gourmet food had been thrown into chaos by a few ambitious individuals. Ichiryu, having lived through that era, knew very well that their pursuit was not quality, but quantity. Only when the quantity was secured could they begin to consider other things. That was why the IGO's current ingredient research was primarily focused on increasing production. Flavor was secondary. A mussel crab is out. As Yuki was touring, a sudden shout rang out. Mansam didn't hesitate for a second and dashed towards the source of the sound, with Yuki right behind him. Soon, Yuki saw a strange-looking crab. It had no hard shell, its body seemed to be pure, well-developed muscle. This was the mussel crab. It wasn't a naturally occurring creature but a product of IGO research. Crabs had hard shells, and while the meat inside was delicious, the shell was a nuisance. The IGO had directly removed the shell and increased its meat yield, resulting in the mussel crab. It hadn't been released to the public yet and was still in the testing phase. Only after passing all inspections could it be mass-produced and sold. But now, for some reason, one had escaped. This was the exact scene that Toriko and Komatsu had witnessed when they first came to Biotope 1. They had arrived after Yuki, so Mansam hadn't gone to greet them. For Toriko, this place was like a second home, and he was Mansam's junior, so there was no need for a formal welcome. On the contrary, Mansam only needed to receive important guests, like Yuki. Get back in there! At that moment, Mansam unleashed his demonic pressure. As a golden aura flared around him, the mussel crab was instantly terrified and scrambled back into its small enclosure. Long time no see, Director Mansam. Reliable as ever. At that moment, Toriko greeted Mansam. What? Are you saying I'm handsome? The next second, however, Mansam once again dropped his signature question. Still not listening to a word people say. Toriko just shook his head. It was clear he was used to this kind of reaction from Mansam. Komatsu was startled when he first saw Mansam, but after hearing his question, he subconsciously decided the man was just thick-skinned. It was this very question that dispelled Komatsu's fear of him. Komatsu, Toriko, long time no see. Yuki greeted the two of them. It had been a long time since they had seen each other in the cavern lagoon. Chef Yuki. Komatsu's eyes lit up. It was always best to run into a familiar face in a place like this. It's you, Yuki. Were you invited too? Toriko clearly knew what the underground arena was for, so it was obvious Yuki had been invited as well. That's right. Director Mansam invited me. Yuki nodded, and the group then headed towards the underground arena. Back in this unpleasant place again. Arriving at the arena, Toriko's expression soured. He had a strong dislike for this place, which didn't surprise Yuki at all. He knew Toriko's personality. Unless absolutely necessary, he believed that any creature you killed, you had to eat. He wouldn't kill needlessly. He had acted the same way in Biotope 8. Because he knew the troll kongs didn't taste good, he initially used knocking to deal with them instead of killing them. Of course, Toriko also knew that his own life was the most important. He would only adhere to this principle when he was safe. If he encountered an inedible beast that threatened his own life or the lives of those around him, he wouldn't hesitate to kill it. The underground arena was where powerful beasts were collected to perform for an audience of wealthy patrons and high-ranking officials from various countries, all to earn money. Toriko didn't like it, but he didn't demand that it be torn down. The reason was simple: the money earned here didn't go into the IGO's main accounts but into its slush fund. This slush fund existed to provide aid to non-member nations. That was why, during the Christmas special, Mansam and the others used beasts to transport ingredients, not various transport vehicles. It wasn't that the IGO didn't have them, it was that they couldn't use them. When they acted on their own, using money from the slush fund, aiding these nations was a voluntary act, not something done with the investments of member nations. So, the member nations knew about it but just turned a blind eye. If the IGO used money from its main accounts or its official transport, the nature of the act would change. And they couldn't provide aid too often, only a few times a year at most. Otherwise, it would easily touch a nerve with the member nations. After all, the IGO had hundreds of member nations, not just one or two. Balancing the relationships between them was incredibly difficult. In the original story, this problem was only solved in the later stages, and that was thanks to Midora. Although he caused the extinction of the world's ingredients, at least the people survived under the IGO's protection. And the high-level officials of those countries were quickly dismantled. The reason was simple: with the world's ingredients extinct, they only had what they had stored. Those officials naturally wouldn't distribute the food, they would enjoy it themselves. As a result, their nations collapsed. In the end, the IGO unified the human world by saving everyone. Though such a union was destined to fracture in the future, at least for now, it was unified. And the people in the countries still at war in the human world were living miserable lives. It was because he knew what the money earned here was used for that Toriko, despite his disgust, didn't try to stop it. Sometimes, there was no perfect solution. Director Mansam, that guy over there is a problem. It's a GT Robo. Yuki suddenly said, looking towards one of the figures. A GT Robo? Hearing this, Mansam, Toriko, and Komatsu were all stunned. They all knew what a GT Robo was. Toriko and Komatsu had encountered the one piloted by Star June in the Cavern Lagoon. That one, however, had been destroyed by Yuki. Mansam knew even more. He had always wanted to get his hands on a few to study. After all, the Gourmet Corp's unorthodox research was quite interesting. The IGO's research was mostly related to public welfare, so in terms of GT Robos, they were truly inferior. It's definitely not a living being. Looks like the Gourmet Corp's technology has improved again. It even managed to fool the IGO's intelligent identification system. Mansam shook his head. It was only because he had gone to greet Yuki that he hadn't been watching personally. Otherwise, this GT Robo never would have been able to sneak in. Mansam's strength was more than enough to easily deal with it. But honestly, for this GT Robo to appear here was baffling. It was just asking to be captured. This was the IGO headquarters. Even if the GT Robo research was updated quickly, it couldn't compare to these top-tier powerhouses. Its appearance here was just a free gift. And if you said it was here to stall for time, it didn't really do that either. In the end, the GT Robos that were capturing the jewel meat were still run into by Toriko and the others. Should we take care of that thing? But there are a lot of people here, all rich and powerful. It wouldn't be good if they got hurt. Toriko looked at the surrounding crowd with some frustration. The status of these people was quite high. If they weren't careful and someone got caught in the crossfire, it would have a huge impact on the IGO. Leave it to me. I can take care of it without anyone noticing, Yuki said, approaching the target, though not directly in front of it. He then used his hair to perform knocking. Done. I've knocked it. It can't move now. We can deal with it after the competition is over. After knocking the target, Yuki informed Mansam and the others. I just sensed hair similar to Sunny's. I didn't expect you to have an ability similar to his. Toriko hadn't sensed it. But Mansam's strength naturally allowed him to perceive the hair Yuki had released. He could clearly feel Yuki using it to perform knocking. At this moment, Mansam was very surprised. Not only because Yuki had an ability similar to Sunny's, but also because of his proficiency with knocking. Mansam wasn't very skilled at knocking, he was more of a frontal combat type. But he could see that Yuki's knocking proficiency was extremely high. And compared to Sunny. At this moment, Mansam felt Sunny was completely outclassed. Look at how Yuki used his hair, then look at Sunny. There was simply no comparison. Chapter 152, A Smart Mother Wolf, a GT Robo Gift. Come to think of it, Sunny's ability is really suited for knocking. And you've been studying with Master Jiro for a while, Yuki. No wonder you could knock that thing so quietly. That's amazing. Toriko was also full of admiration. Yuki's silent knocking was too incredible. Sunny had a similar ability, but he didn't know how to use it. Comparing the two, Toriko felt Sunny couldn't even hold a candle to him. Thank you so much this time, Chef Yuki. The competition is about to start. Let's watch the match first and deal with that thing later. Sam was also relaxed now. Being able to take care of the opponent without a sound was undoubtedly the best option, so he was very grateful to Yuki. Though he could have instantly destroyed it himself, the commotion would have certainly panicked the audience, which would have been a hassle. Don't mention it. It's not like I have any fond feelings for the GT Robo or the Gourmet Corporation, Yuki remarked. In the entire Gourmet Corp, only Midora and Star June were worthy of his respect. As for the others, forget it. Those guys from the Gourmet Corp are really too much. A pity they're so hard to catch, and no prison can hold them. Sam said. The best way to deal with members of an organization like the Gourmet Corp was to kill them directly. Capturing them was useless. The tortures of Honey Prison had no effect on them. Take Zebra, for example. Though he was a special case, he had endured all those tortures, and none of them had worked. So, capturing members of the Gourmet Corp was pointless. The best method was to eliminate them directly. As they were talking, the competition began. Beasts were released into the arena one after another. For Yuki and the others, a battle like this was like watching chickens peck at each other. It was like watching two ants fight, they felt nothing. But for the wealthy patrons and important figures, it was different. People with gourmet cells were a very small minority. These people, naturally, didn't have them. And they knew the consequences of forcibly fusing with gourmet cells. So, unless it was a last resort, these people wouldn't risk it. For a group of ordinary people, facing creatures of level 8, 9, or even in the teens and 20s, was a huge visual shock. The IGO also took this opportunity to continuously rake in money to fill its slush fund, to later send some warmth to the war-torn regions. When it came to the final match, the main event appeared. Besides creatures like the Devil Serpent, there was also a battle wolf cloned by the IGO. It had to be said, the technology of this world was truly powerful. They had even cloned a battle wolf. But unfortunately, the cloned wolf, whether in strength or potential, couldn't compare to the real thing. Yuki had a lot of respect for this mother wolf. She was smart. A cloned battle wolf, its strength and potential were far inferior to the original. But one thing remained unchanged, the pride etched into the battle wolf's genes. The mother wolf had long been aware of her situation, knowing that her existence was a disgrace to the battle wolf race. After all, no matter how she grew, the best she could hope for was to reach a level where she could enter the gourmet world. To avoid becoming a disgrace to her race, the mother wolf directly reproduced. The battle wolf species was capable of parthenogenesis. And to nurture a healthy pup, the mother wolf had sacrificed everything she had. Terry's immense talent was all thanks to his mother. Yuki wasn't interested in the battle wolf. The reason was simple, though he could intercept Terry now, Terry's growth rate couldn't keep up with his. Forget him, in the original story, besides Zebra, the other 4 heavenly kings all had their own pets, and they were all members of the 8 king species. But their growth rates couldn't keep up with Toriko and the others. Toriko and his friends were constantly eating special ingredients, each one allowing their cell levels to increase dramatically. But these foods were useless to the battle wolf and the other beasts. So, eating them was pointless. This led to a situation in the late stages where, besides Terry being able to summon reinforcements like the battle wolf, Kiss and Queen had completely disappeared. After all, in the late stages of the story, even beings like the 8 kings became high-level cannon fodder, let alone Kiss and the others. So Yuki had no feeling for pets. What he needed more was a suitable camping monster. As the battle began, due to a series of silly operations by Rin, the arena became chaotic, and the other creatures began to attack the mother battle wolf. It looked like she was just standing there taking a beating, but these creatures couldn't actually break her defense. Though she was a clone and much weaker in all aspects, she wasn't something these creatures could touch. Oh? Is this one pregnant? Seeing this, Toriko guessed what was happening and immediately took action. The glass enclosure, with its extremely high defense, was directly pierced by him. When Toriko appeared in the arena, all the humans and beasts were stunned for a moment, and then the humans erupted in excited roars. The reason was simple. Back in the day, Toriko and the others were often thrown into places like this to fight with beasts to train their combat experience. So, he was all too familiar with this place. The beasts now also turned their attention to Toriko. After all, they couldn't bite the battle wolf. Now that another fearless one had delivered himself to their mouths, they naturally couldn't let him go. And at this moment, intimidation was useless against these beasts. Because of the Beast Tamer Rin's series of silly operations, they were all in a berserk state. Besides fighting, they couldn't think of anything else. Without the interference of the GT Robo, these beasts were no match for Toriko. Soon, the glass enclosure was also shattered by him, to celebrate the birth of the little battle wolf. I didn't expect a cloned battle wolf could reproduce asexually. That's really something. But that bastard Toriko is too reckless. Good grief, it's going to take a lot of effort to calm these things down, Mansam said with some exasperation. Yuki just smiled. Toriko did indeed do things as he pleased sometimes. Before being abused in the gourmet world, his style was a bit too much. After he returned from the gourmet world, he became a bit more mature. To put it bluntly, his recent experiences had made him arrogant. His strength had improved too quickly. After all, for the past 10 or 20 years, his improvement had been very slow. But after eating a few good things, his cell level began to soar. It was normal for him to become arrogant at this time. But after a trip to the gourmet world, he wouldn't be able to be arrogant anymore. With the birth of the little battle wolf, this incident finally came to an end. Toriko looked at the mother and pup. As for Mansam, he went to the GT Robo disguised as President Dohem. Damn it! What did you do? Why can't I move? Yuki had controlled the GT Robo's movements, but the voice came from another machine, from someone at the Gourmet Corp headquarters, so it wasn't blocked. Who the hell are you? Your voice sounds a bit familiar. Haven't you realized you've been knocked? Mansam looked at the GT Robo with some exasperation. Yuki's knocking had already reached a high level, knocking a machine was easy for him. After all, at his level, the technique of knocking was already becoming quite mystical. I've been knocked? That's impossible. No one even touched me. The GT Robo, hearing that it had been knocked, was also completely baffled. He didn't understand. He had just been sitting here watching the show. He was about to make a move after seeing the battle wolf give birth. But then he found he couldn't move. Though he could still see the outside world through the GT Robo and could speak, he just couldn't move. He never thought he would be knocked, especially so silently. Knocking doesn't necessarily require contact. But I should also thank you. After all, your appearance has provided us with very good material. With that, one of Mansam's hands plunged directly into the GT Robo's body, and then a detonation device was pulled out. Now you can't self-destruct, can you? After destroying the device in his hand, Mansam looked at the GT Robo with a grin. With this GT Robo, it meant they could quickly replicate it. The Gourmet Corp's achievement this time had given them a nice little bonus. Damn it! With its self-destruct device removed, the GT Robo could only rage helplessly. After tearing off its disguise, Mansam had someone take the GT Robo away for research. As for him, how could he not pay attention to something as big as a battle wolf giving birth? Yuki had been observing the situation between Toriko and the battle wolf. The mother wolf, after killing the devil serpent, returned to her pup's side. After a while, the pup came to Toriko. It had to be said, the mother wolf's intelligence was indeed very high. She was a clone, so her strength and potential were damaged, and she couldn't escape the IGO's research institute. She knew very well that even if she successfully gave birth, it wouldn't be easy for her child to get out. It would most likely be taken for various research projects. So, the mother wolf needed to find a backer for her pup. That backer was Toriko. She had just observed his situation. Though his strength wasn't very strong, he had been able to break through the glass, which was still quite impressive. And most critically, after he broke through the glass, Man Sam, the person in charge, didn't punish him but instead watched from the side. This showed Toriko's status. If her child followed him, it meant it wouldn't be casually sent to a lab. This was the mother wolf's decision. That was why the pup was now approaching Toriko. On one hand, it was out of gratitude. On the other, it was because of its mother's instructions. What's this about? Toriko was also surprised. The battle wolf was notoriously fierce. It was a creature from the gourmet world, yet it was now so docilely approaching him. It probably wants to follow you. Look at its mother. This was her decision. Yuki reminded him. He could see the reluctance and determination in the mother wolf's eyes. Toriko, Man Sam, and the others, hearing his words, also looked at the mother wolf. Sure enough, they also saw her intention. A smart one. Toriko, you decide. Man Sam said. Though he also wanted to study the battle wolf, if Toriko accepted the pup, he would also give up on further research. At that time, not only would the pup be able to follow Toriko and gain its freedom, but the mother wolf would as well. Actually, the mother wolf didn't have much time left to live. Yuki could clearly sense that during the birth, her life energy was continuously pouring into the pup. But the pup didn't become very strong. It was clear that she was helping it improve its potential. This practice made the pup's potential immense, but in return, the mother wolf wouldn't live for much longer. In that case, you can follow me. From now on, I'll call you Terry. Toriko didn't refuse. And having a battle wolf as a companion was a very good choice. He had been envious of Coco's kiss before, now he had one of his own. In that case, take the mother wolf with you too. After all, they're mother and child. We won't be continuing our research on battle wolves. Man Sam said. In fact, the research project had already been stopped because the cloned battle wolves had huge defects. And continuing the research could lead to problems. Though the battle wolf clan lived on the second continent and generally didn't enter the human world, if they found out the IGO was cloning them and continuing such experiments, even the Wolf King Guinness probably wouldn't let them off. Looking at the two battle wolves, Yuki took out a BB corn kernel from his backpack. It was actually taken from his storage space. He now carried a large backpack with him to make things less suspicious. What a huge corn kernel! Seeing the BB corn, Komatsu's eyes widened. Yuki planned to make BB popcorn here because it was a dish the battle wolves could eat. The BB corn in Wool Jungle had been wiped out by him before. Though he had replanted it, it would take some time to grow. So, he chose to take out the BB corn now. Chapter 153, Sunny, a super upgraded version of me? Mansam's commission. Is that the BB corn from Wool Jungle? Mansam immediately recognized the ingredient. Yuki had just come from there, and he'd cut down every last stalk. Although he had replanted them, it would take some time for them to mature again. BB corn? You mean the legendary ingredient from the gourmet world? The one where a single kernel can pop enough popcorn to feed 100 people? Hearing the name, Toriko's eyes began to sparkle. The man loved to eat, and the presence of such a delicacy had his full attention. That's the one, Yuki confirmed. But I'll have to correct you on one point, it's enough for much more than just 100 people. As he spoke, flames erupted from his hand, the heat beginning to envelop the BB corn kernel. Is that Yuki's appetite demon ability? It's perfect for a chef. He can just create fire on demand. If I remember correctly, BB corn needs to be heated to over 1,000 degrees, right? Toriko knew a little about BB corn, though he'd never gone to capture it himself due to his insufficient strength in the past. That's right. Over 1,000 degrees, and the temperature has to be increased gradually, otherwise the preparation will fail. As Yuki spoke, the BB corn on his palm began to dance like a tap dancer before shooting into the air. The next second, with a massive bang, a colossal shower of golden popcorn rained down. Yuki's hair shot out to catch a portion, setting it down in front of the group. The rest, he let fall. That was for the mother and pup battle wolves. Seeing this, the two wolves knew his intention and instantly transformed into streaks of silver light, darting into the golden rain of popcorn. Oh? So they'll eat it because it's from the gourmet world? This mother wolf barely ate anything after she was created. I thought something was wrong with her, but it turns out she's just a picky eater. Mansam was exasperated. He never thought a battle wolf could be so choosy, refusing anything not from the gourmet world. But look at them now, mother and pup were devouring the BB popcorn with pure joy. So this is the legendary BB popcorn. It really is more than enough for 100 people. This amount could feed 1,000. Toriko said, staring at the downpour of popcorn. Not everyone had an appetite as massive as his. For people without gourmet cells, even the biggest eaters had their limits. This amount of popcorn could easily feed 1,000 of them. A pity BB corn requires such nutrient-rich soil to grow. Normal land just can't support it. Mansam said, munching on a piece of popcorn. If a food like this could be used for the general populace, it would be incredible. But the amount of nutrients it absorbed during growth was terrifying. It would drain ordinary soil in no time. The entirety of Wool Jungle could only produce so much. It was because of this that BB corn could never be mass-produced or find its way onto the public's table. Oh, my gourmet cells are activating. After eating the BB corn, Toriko felt his cells spring to life. Yuki and Mansam, having eaten it before, had no reaction. As for Komatsu, his gourmet cells hadn't awakened yet, so he felt nothing either. Chef Yuki, may I add BB corn to my full course menu? Toriko was certain that this ingredient was perfectly suited for his gourmet cells, so he turned to Yuki. You don't need to ask me. While I may have captured this BB corn, it doesn't mean I own all of it. Yuki explained that BB corn didn't just grow in Wool Jungle, it also existed in the gourmet world and the old Biotope 10. Toriko had no need to ask his permission. I see. Then it's decided. I'm adding BB corn to my full course menu. After the rainbow fruit, Toriko had now claimed the second ingredient for his menu. Congratulations, Toriko-san. Komatsu cheered from the side. To witness Toriko collecting the items for his full course menu was an honor for him. Oh whoa. Toriko's decision also made the little battle wolf howl. The pup had already accepted him, so sensing its new master's joy, it couldn't help but cry out. Director! Director! I just got a message from my brother. He said he's captured the regal mammoth and is on his way back. He'll be here soon. Just as they were talking, a voice cut in. It was Rin, the one who always seemed to lose her head. She was usually reliable, but she had a bad case of lovesickness, and seeing Toriko made her completely lose focus, leading to a series of blunders. What? He captured the regal mammoth? And he's on his way back? Hearing this, Mansam's brain seemed to short-circuit. He looked as if he'd just heard the world's most ridiculous joke. What's wrong, director? Is there a problem? Toriko looked at him with confusion. He had been invited back this time specifically for the jewel meat, which was said to be inside the regal mammoth. Why would Mansam have such a reaction to Sunny bringing the ingredient back? A fully grown adult is measured in kilometers. Bringing one back is like trying to carry a mountain. Sunny is one of the 4 heavenly kings, just like you. Is his brute strength really that great? Yuki briefly explained to everyone and then asked. No way. My brother's hair is strong, but there's no way he could move something that massive. But, he wouldn't lie. Rin immediately denied it. Sunny's hair was numerous and incredibly powerful. In terms of pure strength, he was likely the strongest of the 4 heavenly kings. But even she didn't believe he could move something that heavy. Then there's another question. Is there a juvenile regal mammoth and biotope one? Yuki asked. There is, one was born not too long ago. So that idiot Sunny, he caught the baby? Mansam was utterly speechless. Capturing the jewel meat was already going to be difficult. Now Sunny had gone and kidnapped its child. It would be a miracle if the regal mammoth didn't go on a rampage. My brother is so unreliable. Rin couldn't help but slap her forehead. Her brother had always been vain, but now he had gone and caused such a massive screw-up. Well, when he gets back, we'll just have to check the little mammoth for the jewel meat. Toriko, Chef Yuki, let's wait for Sunny. After he brings the little regal mammoth, you can set out. Before that, feel free to enjoy my full course menu. With that, Mansam had someone go and prepare his menu. Yuki had zero interest in it. It was simple. Mansam's full course menu was a pure alcoholic stream. His gourmet cells were extreme alcoholics, liquor was more effective for him than any food. So his menu wasn't high level, but every single ingredient was related to alcohol. I didn't expect Chef Yuki to be a teetotaler. That's a bit like the president. Mansam remarked. President Ichiryu also didn't drink much, mainly because he was a terrible lightweight. In Mansam's view, that was missing out on one of life's great pleasures. I think you could have a great chat about drinking with Master Jiro. He's also someone who would die for a good drink. Yuki noted that the amount of alcohol Jiro drank every day was staggering. He felt that he and Mansam would have endless topics to discuss. Let's not and say we did. Master Jiro is elusive, and I have to handle IGO matters. I don't have that kind of time for swapping stories. Mansam said with a helpless sigh. He was incredibly busy, having to manage many of the human world's affairs. Later, Mansam had someone prepare other ingredients for Yuki. After they had been eating for a while, Sunny finally returned. I can't believe this thing is just a baby. But that Sunny is really showing off. Anyone who didn't know better would think he actually has the strength to hold it with one hand. Toriko said with a scoff, gnawing on the leg of a Bacchus dragon. My brother just loves to look cool. Toriko is so much better, you'd never do something so pretentious. Rin, truly her brother's sister, didn't pull any punches when it came to criticizing him. Only a sibling could get away with that. Long time no see, Toriko. Looks like you've been eating well lately, HM? Upon his return, Sunny tossed the little regal mammoth over, which Mansam caught with brute force. Sunny, meanwhile, began to use his hair to probe everyone's condition. He had mastered his sense of touch. By touching someone's body, he could determine any changes. This action earned him glares of disapproval from Rin and Toriko, but Sunny soon discovered that his feelers were useless against Yuki and the battle wolves. The two wolves immediately dodged his hair the moment they sensed it. As for Yuki, he simply created a barrier of calories that kept Sunny's hair from touching him. He had no desire to be touched by Sunny's feelers. The result was that Sunny found his ability completely ineffective. Sunny, don't go touching people with your hair. Especially not in front of Chef Yuki. He has an ability similar to yours, and it's much stronger. Seeing this, Mansam immediately warned him. Yuki was a super chef, and his strength was at a level where he could enter the gourmet world. He wasn't someone Sunny could afford to fight. Hearing this, Sunny immediately retracted his hair. He knew Mansam's personality. For him to speak so seriously meant that Yuki was not weak. He wouldn't be reckless. But what left both him and Rin completely shocked was that Yuki had an ability similar to his. Brother, you didn't deliberately dye your hair like that, did you? Looking at Yuki's black hair, then at her brother's multicolored mess, Rin suddenly felt that her brother was incredibly lame. No way. My hair has a very important purpose. Sunny immediately denied it. It wasn't a joke. He didn't control the color. His hair, blue represented cold points, pink for warm points, green for pressure points, and white for pain points. Though Yuki's hair could also sense everything, it wasn't a rainbow of colors. That was the big difference between them. Alright, you can all stop talking. I need to take the little regal mammoth for testing first. You should all hurry up and capture the jewel meat. Those guys from the Gourmet Corp are probably about to get their hands on it. Mansam reminded them. He was about to leave when he suddenly looked at Yuki again. Chef Yuki, I'll leave these kids in your care. Mansam said. Yuki's current strength made him absolutely invincible in Biotope 1. Even the GT Robos couldn't touch him. So, for the safety of Toriko and Sunny, Mansam had to ask for Yuki's help. No problem. I'm also interested in the jewel meat, after all. Yuki agreed. He was actually more curious about which member of the Gourmet Corp would show up this time. In the original story, it was several GT Robos. The strongest among them was Starjun's. But he had already destroyed that one. He wondered if Starjun would still come. If he did, would he come in his real body, or would he use a different GT Robo? Hey! Director, you don't have to look down on us like that. Hearing Mansam's words, Sunny understood. He was implying that they couldn't handle this matter on their own, which was why he was asking Yuki to look after them. He didn't doubt Yuki's strength, he just doubted Mansam's judgment. He was strong too, okay? This time, you're not just facing a regal mammoth. You're also facing those maniacs from the Gourmet Corporation. Their robots aren't so easy to deal with. In any case, just be careful. Mansam shook his head and left with the little regal mammoth. Though he could carry it, there was no need to keep holding it up. He had to get the testing done as soon as possible and return the baby. Otherwise, if the adult regal mammoth went berserk, its destructive power would be immense. Its sheer size was proof of that. Chapter 154, An Illogical Plot, The Massive Regal Mammoth. Honestly, for people like Mansam, killing the regal mammoth would be easy. But a creature like this was very rare, and they were the ones who had stolen its child. So, unless absolutely necessary, he wouldn't kill it. After Mansam left, the group headed directly into the wild area of Biotope 1. Though this was the IGO headquarters, the headquarters itself only occupied a small area. The rest was still wilderness. Biotope 1 was divided into several parts. The first was the section occupied by the IGO headquarters. Besides its various research facilities, there were also some tourist areas specially prepared for the rich and powerful. These places had been cleared by the IGO, so there was no danger. Next were the Black Carpet, the White Forest, the Mushroom Woods, the Swamp of Antiquity, the Devil's Athletics, and the Regal Plateau. The Regal Plateau was the largest area because it was where the regal mammoth lived. An area that could support a kilometer-class beast couldn't be small. Each of these areas held a certain degree of danger. The safest place was the Mushroom Woods. Though there were creatures like the soy sauce grasshopper, they were mostly harmless. As for the other areas, they were all very dangerous. The Swamp of Antiquity connected the Mushroom Woods and the Regal Plateau and was home to many powerful creatures. Capture levels of 20 to 30 were very common. Many of these creatures were from ancient times, preserved to this day because of the special nature of the marshland. The Black Carpet connected directly to the Regal Plateau, but it was home to a very powerful creature called the Rock Drum, a mountain giant tens of meters tall. In the original story, a very bizarre plot point occurred here. Sunny used his hair lock to restrain a rock drum, but because the rock drum's strength was too great, it broke free from Sunny's restraint and kicked the group, sending them flying to the White Forest and Mushroom Woods respectively. That plot point was completely illogical. The rock drum only kicked once. While it's true that depending on where you were standing, you would land in different places, but for one kick to send people flying in completely different directions like a blooming flower, what kind of logic was that? And most critically, both the Mushroom Woods and the White Forest were hundreds of kilometers away from the Black Carpet. The rock drum's capture level was only in the 20s. With that level of strength, how could it possibly kick someone hundreds of kilometers? Yuki knew this plot point was created to introduce Biotope 1, but having the rock drum perform such a feat was too ridiculous. It would have been more reasonable to just place a very powerful creature on the black carpet from the beginning. That would have forced them to take other routes, and then you could just arrange for an accident to separate them. In any case, it would have been more logical than being kicked by a rock drum. The black carpet had powerful creatures like the rock drum. The white forest was teeming with even more beasts, and they were very peculiar. Normally, these beasts didn't fight among themselves unless they were hunting. But if an outsider appeared, they would swarm and attack. That's what happened to Toriko and Rin in the original story. They were directly mobbed by countless beasts. For a moment, Toriko couldn't break through. And these beasts were strong, so normal intimidation methods wouldn't work. Helpless, he could only have Rin use her battle fragrance, which had its own side effects. By using this method to enhance his own presence, he finally scared away all the beasts except for the Apsaurus. Speaking of which, Yuki was also quite interested in the Apsaurus. Though it was a bit ugly, its combat power was not weak. And while it had a masochistic personality, as long as it wasn't defeated by a more powerful being, it would be absolutely loyal. Between the White Forest and the Regal Plateau was the Devil's Athletics. Compared to a naturally formed area, this place felt more man-made. Yuki felt it might have been created by the Red Nitro race. The Devil's Athletics was like a strange obstacle course. And the beasts within the stages would only attack if you entered a certain range. Otherwise, even if you passed right by them, they wouldn't react. Finally, there was the Regal Plateau. This was where the Regal Mammoth lived, a kilometer-class beast. The area was vast. Besides the mammoth, it was also home to various massive, powerful, and highly reproductive beasts. These beasts were the Regal Mammoth's food source. It was only because they were so resilient, reproductive, and fast-growing that they could sustain the Regal Mammoth's appetite. But even so, the Regal Plateau had become a land of bones. Massive skeletons littered the ground, all the handiwork of the Regal Mammoth. The group's current location was the Black Carpet. From here, they could go directly to the Regal Plateau. The danger wasn't high. The black grass here was also an ingredient. Yuki wasn't very interested, but the gluttonous Toriko directly pulled up a handful and stuffed it into his mouth. That guy really ate everything. Toriko, stop wasting time. Those GT robos are much faster than us. If we don't hurry to the Regal Plateau, the jewel meat might be gone. Seeing Toriko so leisurely eating the black grass, Sunny had a dark look on his face. This was the thing he couldn't stand most about Toriko. He wanted to eat everything he saw. What are you talking about, brother? It's because of your screw-up, capturing the little Regal Mammoth, that we're behind. We haven't even blamed you, and you're blaming Toriko. Toriko didn't say anything to that, and Komatsu, not knowing them well, also stayed quiet. But Rin, Sunny's own sister, couldn't stand it. As someone who adored Toriko, she didn't care who it was. If you said something bad about him, you were her enemy, even her own brother. Hey! Are you my sister or Toriko's sister? Seeing his own sister's elbow bending so far outwards, Sunny was completely speechless. Roar! Just as Sunny's voice fell, the massive boulders on the black carpet stood up. These were the rock drums. What the group had seen before weren't boulders, but rock drums lying on the ground. Woken up by Sunny and Rin's argument, they fixed their gazes on the group. It's the rock drums. I'll take care of these guys. With that, Sunny immediately activated his hair lock. Just like in the original story, the lock shot out and bound the rock drums. I'd suggest you use a bit more hair. These things are incredibly strong. They haven't even started to struggle yet. The amount of hair you're using now won't be enough. Yuki reminded him. Sunny wasn't incapable of controlling these things, but he was being a bit careless, using only a small amount of hair. That was why he couldn't restrain them and ended up getting kicked in the original story. No need. The rock drum's level. I have experience dealing with beasts of this level with this much hair. Sunny was about to say that he was experienced, but the next second, the hair restraining the rock drums was snapped by a tremendous force. But just then, Yuki's hair shot out as a follow-up. Instantly, the several massive rock drums stood frozen on the spot. He hadn't used his hair to restrain them, using it for knocking was the correct way to control them. I know you're confident, but sometimes, overconfidence is just arrogance. In the wild, that kind of arrogance can get you killed at any time. Yuki remarked that Sunny was getting a bit full of himself. It was a good thing that in the original story setting, that kick only sent them flying, otherwise, to be sent flying hundreds of kilometers, they would be lucky not to be instantly smashed to pieces. Hearing this, Sunny didn't retort. No one likes to be lectured, but Yuki had indeed cleaned up his mess, so he didn't argue. And Yuki was telling the truth. He could have restrained them, but he was too confident. He had learned his lesson now, silently vowing to go all out next time. Wait, did you use knocking? Sunny suddenly asked. He realized Yuki hadn't restrained them with his hair like he had, but had used knocking. After a single touch, he retracted his hair. That's right, knocking. For those of us with abilities like this, learning knocking is the best option. After all, our attacks are often hard to detect, and our range is a bit wider than others. Yuki nodded. Using his hair for knocking was indeed very effective. Hearing this, Sunny fell silent again. At this moment, he was also thinking, should he learn a technique like this? Of course, that's just for me. You should still find the fighting style that suits you best. Forcing yourself to learn something you're not good at isn't a good thing. Yuki added. Though this ability was best used this way, it also depended on the person. If Sunny wasn't good at it or didn't like it, forcing him to learn it would only have negative effects. After that conversation, the group headed directly for the Regal Plateau. Along the way, Sunny also collected some of the stones from the rock drums. He liked all beautiful things, and the rocks on the rock drums were a very good material, so he naturally wouldn't let them go. With their speed, traveling was very fast. As for Komatsu and Rin, their speed was slow, but with Sunny there, it wasn't a problem. He directly carried them along. It had to be said, the battle wolf was truly a creature with its agility maxed out. Though Terry had only been born a short time ago, his speed was already very fast. There are rock drum corpses here, and quite a few of them. And this footprint, it's clearly from a GT Robo. And isn't this GT Robo's footprint a bit too big? Soon, the group saw some fragments of rock drums and the massive footprints of a GT Robo on the ground. It was clear that this GT Robo was quite large. Being massive has its advantages, but against a creature like the Regal Mammoth, size is no advantage at all. Unless the Gourmet Corp can build a GT Robo bigger than the Regal Mammoth. Yuki remarked. Against a behemoth like the Regal Mammoth, being small was actually an advantage. After all, a human was like an ant to it. It would be difficult for it to notice a few ants. But a GT Robo dozens of meters tall, that was like a person seeing a rat. It was very easy to spot. So, this GT Robo was just a target. Its appearance here was completely redundant. And the jewel meat was inside the Regal Mammoth. To get in, your size couldn't be too big. A GT Robo of this size couldn't possibly get inside. That's true. Being big doesn't mean anything. But we should still speed up. Who knows if those guys have succeeded yet? With that, the group picked up their pace. It didn't take long for them to arrive at the base of the Regal Plateau. Directly in front of them was a sheer cliff face, almost at a 90-degree angle. This cliff was several kilometers high. A normal person would find it impossible to climb, but for them, it was much simpler. Toriko directly used his bare hands, easily digging them into the rock face and quickly climbing up. Sunny used his hair to carry himself and the others up. Yuki was even more direct, he just flew. In Sunny and the others' eyes, it looked like he was also using his hair to carry himself up. Just like that, the group rapidly ascended the Regal Plateau. But midway up, they saw some not-so-small heavy cliffs in some of the caves. These creatures' capture levels weren't low, and their combat power was not weak. In the original story, they had caused quite a bit of trouble for Toriko and the others. Everyone be quiet. These heavycliff won't randomly attack other creatures. As long as we don't disturb them, they won't attack us even if we pass by. Sunny warned, then directly grabbed Toriko with his hair. Toriko's climbing was a bit too loud, so he was carrying him now. Just as Sunny said, as long as they didn't make too much noise and disturb the heavy cliff, they wouldn't attack. The group smoothly arrived at the Regal Plateau. In the original story, when Sunny and the others arrived here, the Regal Mammoth had just jumped down. But this time, the group hadn't been kicked to the White Forest in Mushroom Woods. So they had saved a lot of time. So much so that by the time they reached the top of the Regal Plateau, the Regal Mammoth hadn't even come over yet. But Yuki could clearly sense its massive body running towards the edge of the plateau. The ground is constantly shaking. So, is the Regal Mammoth nearby? As soon as they got up, Toriko and the others felt the vibrations under their feet. Chapter 155, Starjan's Misfortune, Capturing the Jewel Meat. That's right, it's nearby. And it's heading this way, fast. It's probably going to jump right off the Regal Plateau to find its child. A mother whose baby is missing, that's a top priority. Yuki explained. Though not human, many creatures held a deep devotion to their young. The Regal Mammoth was no different. After discovering its child was gone, it had begun a frantic search across the highlands. Now, having likely scoured the entire plateau without finding a trace, its only option was to leave and search elsewhere. To a human, the height of the Regal Plateau was terrifying. But to a behemoth like the Regal Mammoth, it was like a person hopping over a low wall, effortless. Boom! 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 A tremendous rumbling approached. With a body of its immense size, every step the Regal Mammoth took shook the very earth, like a superscale earthquake. The Regal Mammoth is coming. Wait, look, there's a GT Robo on top of it, attacking. It must be the owner of those footprints we saw earlier. Sunny was the first to spot it, his eyes widening at the mammoth's colossal scale. Compared to this giant, the 100-meter-long juvenile was a mere speck. There was no comparison. And at that moment, they all saw a massive GT Robo relentlessly attacking the Regal Mammoth. Its assault, however, couldn't even scratch the mammoth's defenses. All it could do was unleash a barrage of futile, impotent explosions. To the Regal Mammoth, its attacks were less than mosquito bites. It didn't even bother to acknowledge them. I'll take care of this one. Toriko shot forward without hesitation. Reaching the GT Robo, he slammed a 5-hit nail punch directly into its abdomen. Boom! 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 With 5 consecutive roars, a massive hole was blasted through the GT Robo's body. Many of its internal components failed, and in the next second, sparks flew as the giant robot exploded into pieces. It lost because of its size. Otherwise, Toriko's 5-hit nail punch wouldn't have been enough to destroy it. Yuki commented. Because this GT Robo was so massive, the materials used in its construction couldn't have been top tier, making its defense weaker than other models. Furthermore, a smaller GT Robo could have been sent flying by the impact, thus dispersing some of the force. But this one was too big, it couldn't be knocked away. And its attention was entirely focused on the Regal Mammoth, leaving it completely open to Toriko's attack. In the end, a single 5-hit nail punch took it out. No one was surprised that Toriko had killed his enemy in one blow. That was the combat style of the Toriko world. If you get an opening, you take the kill shot, leaving no chance for a comeback. Just as Toriko finished off the giant GT Robo, the Regal Mammoth's colossal body charged past the edge of the highlands. Such a massive behemoth, plummeting from the sky, the impact was immense. The heavy cliffs and the rock walls were startled, but they didn't rush out of their dens. In the original story, they had emerged because they mistook the commotion for Sunny and the others, which is why they had targeted them. But now, the group was already on the plateau. The heavy cliff had no target. They weren't about to intentionally get smashed by a regal mammoth, so they huddled in their nests, refusing to come out. "We have to catch up, or that thing will be gone," Sunny shouted. The regal mammoth's massive size meant its running speed was incredible. Catching up would not be easy. However, just as they gave chase, the color of the regal mammoth's body suddenly changed, as if it had been dyed a shade of purple. "That's Coco's poison." Toriko recognized it instantly. The poison was paralyzing the mammoth's body. The moment he finished speaking, a great bird appeared in their eyes. It was the juvenile emperor crow, Kiss, with Coco on its back. "Sorry, I'm a little late." It wasn't just Toriko and Sunny, Coco had been invited as well. "Coco, you're here. That's great. It's a good thing you paralyzed this big guy, otherwise, it would have taken us some effort to catch up," Toriko said with a grin. Coco then greeted Yuki. He was very polite towards him. After all, he knew Yuki was a super chef and a super powerhouse. Just as they were about to enter the regal mammoth's body, Yuki noticed another GT Robo approaching. Without a second word, he pulled out a small knife and slashed in its direction. He had no intention of using his exclusive knife on it. There was no need. At this moment, Yuki finally understood how Mihawk felt. Mihawk had used a tiny dagger against Zoro because he felt Zoro wasn't worthy of his black blade, Yoru. Yuki certainly wouldn't draw his own blade for this. A small knife was enough. With a single slash, a massive blade of energy instantly tore through the GT Robo. Before it could even react, it was sliced in two, exploding into a shower of fragments. Another GT Robo? Just how many did the Gourmet Corp send this time? Watching Yuki cut it down with a single stroke, Toriko was stunned. They had already run into one at the arena, and now two more here. That was three already. There are GT Robo signals on the Regal Plateau, but they've already been scrapped. There's another one inside this big guy's stomach. And there's one last one on its way from the Devil's Athletics. Yuki explained. The Gourmet Corp had dispatched a total of 6 GT Robos this time. The strongest one was the furthest away and had yet to arrive. In the original story, that one was piloted by Starjun. But now that Starjun's had been destroyed, Yuki was curious to see what this new one was like. There's one inside, too? Then let's hurry. It'll be trouble if it gets the jewel meat. Hearing there was another one inside, the group was alarmed and decided to go in immediately to prevent it from capturing the jewel meat. As for the one still on its way, it wasn't the priority. The one inside was. In that case, I'll stay outside. If the paralysis wears off, I'll reapply it. And I can stop the GT Robo that hasn't arrived yet. Coco offered. Let's all go in together. You're no match for that GT Robo. As for the Regal Mammoth, that's easy. I'll just add a layer of knocking. No need to keep using your poison, Yuki said. Judging by the aura of the approaching GT Robo, Coco was no match for it. If he stayed behind rashly, he would just be one shot. The plot had already changed. It wasn't impossible for one of the 4 Heavenly Kings to be killed now. Is that GT Robo really strong? Toriko, having personally destroyed one, asked with some doubt. Remember the one you met in the Cavern Lagoon? This one will be even stronger than that, Yuki stated. From its aura, it was indeed stronger. As for whether it was piloted by Starjun, that didn't matter. Then let's go in together. Hearing this, Coco no longer insisted. It was no joke, he still had vivid memories of how terrifying that GT Robo was. If he had to face it again, he would be instantly defeated. Since this one was even stronger, he certainly wouldn't dare to face it. What are you guys talking about? What happened in the Cavern Lagoon? Sunny asked with confusion. He wasn't there at the time, so he naturally didn't know. Coco then told him what had happened. That GT Robo, when we met it, we instantly went into combat mode. It felt like if it made a move, we would die. If it weren't for Chef Yuki and Knocking Master Jiro being there, the two of us might not have made it back. Coco shook his head. That GT Robo was simply too strong. Hearing this, a chill went down Sunny's spine. Though he didn't know how strong the current Coco was, he had seen Toriko's combat power. Just like that, the group entered directly through the regal mammoth's mouth. Are we sure we won't just end up in its stomach if we go in like this? Komatsu asked with some concern. He still remembered the countless skeletons he had seen before. The regal mammoth's digestive ability was clearly quite strong. No, the regal mammoth's internal structure is very special. Its digestive organs, including its eating and excretion functions, are all handled by those two unique trunks. Because of the massive labyrinth within its body, the regal mammoth lacked many internal organs. Its digestive system had been replaced by its two trunks. One trunk would suck things in, and in that instant, digestion and nutrient absorption were completed. The other trunk would then spray out the bones and waste. The efficiency was incredibly high. As for its abdomen, that was completely occupied by the giant labyrinth. Soon, the group followed the regal mammoth's throat down and arrived at the labyrinth's entrance. There, they ran into the GT Robo that had entered earlier. The moment they met, Yuki destroyed it in a single move. The reason was simple: he found it disgusting. The pilot of this GT Robo was an absolute, unadulterated pervert who liked to dig out the eyeballs of other creatures and collect them. An operation like that, the only thing Yuki regretted was that the pilot's real body wasn't here. Otherwise, he would have killed him on the spot. This was why he had no favorable impression of the Gourmet Corp besides Midora and Star June. The rest were more or less deviants. Midora didn't care about anything but eating. Star June had his own bottom line. Though he had done plenty of dirty work, he was much better than the others. And after learning that Toriko was his brother, even though they hadn't spent much time together, Star June would still risk his life for him, nearly dying at the hands of his own father. The vast majority of the Gourmet Corp were perverts and criminals. There was no problem in killing any of them. What a disgusting guy. Seeing the collection of eyeballs, Sunny and the others wore expressions of disgust. But since it had already been destroyed by Yuki, there was no need to dwell on it. As for the giant octopus inside, it had sensed the danger outside and didn't dare to come out. This giant octopus lived inside the regal mammoth, a kind of parasite. It had been tamed by the GT Robo's pilot after it arrived and was now hiding inside its body. Though it was dozens of meters long, it could compress its body to a very small size. That was how it was hiding inside the robot. Now that the GT Robo was destroyed, it didn't dare to make a move. It just wanted to wait for them to leave before coming out. Yuki himself couldn't be bothered to eat such a thing. It was better to find the jewel meat. Only after the group had left did the giant octopus quietly slip out and enter the labyrinth. Yuki, however, had already figured out the entire maze. Though it was very complex, it wasn't a problem for him. Normally, it would be impossible to find the location of the jewel meat. Its location was very special, in an enclosed space. The light inside was from the jewel meat itself, shining through the walls of flesh. Yuki came to the nearest passage, sliced open the wall with one cut, and walked inside. He then saw the massive jewel meat. So this is the jewel meat. The light is so dazzling. When Toriko and the others saw it, they felt their eyes could barely handle the brightness. What a beautiful ingredient! Sunny was also full of admiration. Let's take it and get out of here. By the way, that last GT Robo is here. Just as Yuki's voice fell, the final GT Robo appeared at the entrance of the cave. It locked eyes with Yuki and the others. The pilot, Star June, his face instantly fell. He never thought he would be so unlucky as to run into Yuki again. Chapter 156, A Mysterious Thundercloud, the Lightning Phoenix appears. At this very moment, Star June vividly remembered just how quickly his GT Robo had been destroyed in the cavern lagoon. Forget fighting back, he didn't even have a chance to run before his GT Robo was annihilated. This new one was built with the latest technology. Though its appearance was still similar to a nitro's, it lacked fur and had a more mechanical feel. The moment he saw it, Yuki recognized it. This one was similar to the model Starjun piloted at the Food Honor Temple. Of course, its performance couldn't compare to that one. But it was much stronger than the one from the Cavern Lagoon. If Toriko and the others had faced it, even if Toriko had a power-up from the jewel meat, they would have been no match for Starjun. The gap between them was too great. And at birth, Starjun had absorbed all of Toriko's nutrients and food luck, which was why Toriko's childhood had been so harsh. He had even been so hungry that he had chewed off his own fingernails. But with Yuki here, it didn't matter how strong the GT Robo was. The upper limit of these machines couldn't even approach capture level 100. They could only play around in the human world. And Yuki's current strength was already a huge leap beyond the standard for entering the gourmet world. That familiar aura, it's the guy from the Cavern Lagoon. Coco couldn't help but look at Starjun with a hint of pity. What kind of luck was this? To be taken out once before, and now to run into Yuki again. But at the same time, Coco was also shocked. Because the strength Starjun was displaying was terrifying. He was thankful Yuki was here. Otherwise, they would have been done for. I didn't expect to run into you all again. Starjun finally spoke, his voice filled with bitterness. What's with this guy? Do you know him? Sunny asked, looking at the GT Robo with a mix of wariness and shock. This one was completely different from the ones they had encountered before. He felt this GT Robo had the power to kill him in an instant. Of course, we know him. We met him in the Cavern Lagoon, but that GT Robo was taken care of by Chef Yuki. This one should be new, but the pilot is probably the same person. Toriko explains simply. Sunny and Rin couldn't help but look at Starjun with pity. What a hard luck case. Why did he have to run into Yuki? Yeah, we meet again. So, I'll have to trouble you to get a new GT Robo. Yuki greeted him with a smile. Then, with a casual slash of the milk knife in his hand, the GT Robo was instantly cut into fragments. Starjun-sama, your GT Robo has lost connection again. The moment the connection was severed, Jojo contacted Starjun again. The one he had been piloting was their latest model, with significantly enhanced combat power. He never thought it would be destroyed again. I know. I ran into that guy from before again. Jojo, get a new GT Robo ready for me. Also, have the intelligence department keep a close eye on that guy named Yuki. I don't want to run into him again. Starjun was incredibly frustrated. Another single encounter. This time, he only got to say one sentence. He had no power to resist. The consecutive defeats made him realize one thing: even if he had been there in his real body, he would have been no match for Yuki. So, all he could do now was avoid this scary guy. At this moment, Starjun was also baffled. With that kind of strength, wouldn't it be better to go to the gourmet world? Why was he meddling in the human world? And stealing the jewel meat from them on top of that. Hearing Starjun's orders, Jojo knew he was in a bad mood, so he didn't ask any more questions. He also knew that with the destruction of his GT Robo, this hunt had failed. The Gourmet Corp hadn't been able to beat the IGO. After all, so many GT Robos had been destroyed. Back in the labyrinth, after capturing the jewel meat, Yuki and the others left the regal mammoth's body. Because it had been knocked by Yuki, the mammoth hadn't moved at all. Soon, Mansum's people also brought the little regal mammoth back. After a checkup, they found no jewel meat inside it. It was clear that the jewel meat only formed after the regal mammoth reached adulthood. This wasn't surprising. The little mammoth still needed a large amount of nutrition to grow. During this period, it would be constantly consuming the nutrients in its body. Naturally, it wouldn't have any extra to form the jewel meat. After the little mammoth was delivered, Yuki released the knocking on the mother. Seeing her child returned unharmed, the regal mammoth let out a sigh of relief and led her baby back to the regal plateau. We finally got it done. Now we can go back and eat the jewel meat. Toriko looked at the jewel meat Yuki had captured. This was a real treasure. Though he hadn't done much, Yuki couldn't possibly not share some with him, right? Let's go. Time to eat the jewel meat. Yuki naturally wouldn't eat it all himself. Though the jewel meat was very rare, he hadn't forgotten that besides the regal plateau, there were also regal mammoths in the old biotope one, and quite a few of them at that. The jewel meat in those mammoths would naturally be even more plentiful. So, there was no need to hoard this piece now. Since the IGO's people had also arrived, the group didn't have to run back themselves. They just took a plane. Attention everyone! There is a thundercloud ahead. We will be entering the storm zone shortly. Please prepare yourselves. As they were flying back, midway through the journey, the pilot's warning came. A thundercloud? Why would there be a thundercloud here? Did you not see it when you came? Toriko asked with some confusion. Why would a thundercloud appear in a place like this? The altitude didn't seem right either. Apologies, we don't know either. We are flying the exact same route as we came. This thundercloud was not here before. The pilot said, also confused. He couldn't figure out what was going on. I see. I know what's going on. Hearing this, Yuki released his perception and immediately found the problem. This thundercloud was moving. And the reason it was moving was because there was a certain creature within it. This creature was the one Yuki had been looking for, the lightning phoenix. The thundercloud always followed the lightning phoenix. So, wherever it flew, the thundercloud would follow. Chef Yuki, you know? What in the world is going on? Komatsu immediately asked. A lightning phoenix is passing by. I'm going to get some feathers. Do you want any? Yuki asked. The feathers of the lightning phoenix were what he needed. Now that he had them, he wouldn't need to make another trip to the vegetable sky. But at this moment, Yuki was also a bit puzzled. Why would the lightning phoenix appear here? He didn't think it was a coincidence. This altitude was not where it would normally appear. In the end, Yuki attributed it to food luck. Only food luck could have drawn the lightning phoenix here. And he guessed this food luck was related to him. The reason was simple. Besides him, though the others knew the legends of the lightning phoenix, they hadn't seen it and weren't particularly interested. This meant it was his food luck that had drawn it here. Jiro had said his food luck was growing rapidly before. Yuki hadn't had a concept of it then, but now the situation was different. This was the benefit of having food luck. As long as it was strong enough, everything would go smoothly. Now, the lightning phoenix had been delivered right to his doorstep. The lightning phoenix? No wonder there's a thundercloud. If I remember correctly, its feathers can be made into a wedding dress, right? It's said that a bride who wears such a dress will have a lifetime of happiness. Coco said. The others didn't have much of a reaction to this, but Rin's eyes went wide. She dreamed of marrying Toriko and becoming his wife. But Toriko, he was similar to Goku, or rather, Kakarot. One was a battle maniac, the other a food maniac. Brother! Rin knew she couldn't capture the feathers herself, so she turned her sights on her brother. Don't use that tone with me. Fine, I'll get them for you. Sunny looked at Rin with exasperation. He knew what kind of person his sister was, a complete tomboy. That was why she was chasing after Toriko. Now, his sister was actually using that cutesy, whiny voice to act coquettishly with him. It made his skin crawl. I knew you were the best, brother. Having achieved her goal, Rin didn't forget to praise her brother a few times. As the cabin door opened, the group went directly to the top of the plane. The surrounding lightning and storm had no effect on them. And being here, they could also block some of the natural attacks, preventing the plane from being directly blown up. After all, there were other people on the plane. It wouldn't be good if it crashed. Here it comes. Just as the wind grew more violent, a flash of golden light appeared. Soon, a massive creature, resembling a phoenix, emerged. This was the lightning phoenix. It wasn't afraid of people. Seeing them, it flew right past them. Yuki reached out, and instantly, a large number of feathers were pulled down by him. As for the others, they didn't have his speed or strength, so they only managed to get a few. But those few were enough to make quite a few wedding dresses. As expected of the lightning phoenix's feathers. With this feather, the surrounding storm seems to have stopped. And even lightning striking it has no effect. The group looked at the feathers in their hands, completely unaffected by the outside environment, and were filled with emotion. As for Rin, she was already holding the feathers and searching on her phone for what kind of clothes to make. Every time she found a photo she liked, she would show it to Toriko. She only wanted to buy what he liked. Having gotten the feathers, the lightning phoenix soon departed. The pilots also finally let out a sigh of relief. That scene just now had really scared them. After all, a plane wasn't anything else. If it crashed, they would most likely be done for. Being brought here as staff, they naturally didn't have gourmet cells. So, if the plane crashed, the probability of them dying was very high. The thundercloud disappeared along with the lightning phoenix. Yuki and the others returned to Biotope 1. Meanwhile, in Wool Jungle, something else was happening. One of the Gourmet Corp's vice chefs, Grinpatch, had appeared here. He was riding his mount, a jack elephant beetle with a capture level of over 85. He had come here to capture BB corn. In the original story, Toriko had even met him and found a chance to destroy one of his weapons. Actually, the Gourmet Corp's vice chefs all had the strength to defeat Toriko and the others. Even Tommy Rod. He had purely been too reckless, but in the end, he still released his trump card. At that time, if it weren't for the Hellboros saving the day, and without Teppei, Toriko would have been no match for Tommy Rod. The same went for Grinpatch. If he used his full strength, the result would naturally be Toriko's tragic defeat. But this guy was very peculiar, much like a certain light man from One Piece who ate the glint fruit. Just like Kizaru, he would slack off if he could, and never work overtime if he didn't have to. When fighting, just putting on a show was enough. Grinpatch was like that. When he met Toriko, Toriko was no match for him. Though he lost a weapon due to his carelessness, it wasn't a big deal for him. At this moment, Grinpatch was staring at the forest in front of him, dazed. Because there wasn't a single shadow of a mature BB corncob anywhere. Chapter 157. IGO's Gift of Ozone Herb, Universe Dumpling. Is this really Wool Jungle? I didn't take a wrong turn, did I? Grinpatch suspected he'd gone to the wrong place entirely. But upon closer inspection, he could still see some BB corn, they just weren't mature yet, looking as if they had been planted only recently. He was completely baffled, with no idea what to say. Helpless, he could only choose to return to the Gourmet Corp with his target ingredient gone. He had to go back and figure out what had happened. But he was destined to never uncover the truth about Wool Jungle. The only ones who knew were a select few, and they would never share that information with the Gourmet Corp. All the Gourmet Corp could do was stare blankly, completely powerless. In a kitchen at the IGO headquarters, Yuki and Komatsu stood before the jewel meat. It was time to prepare it. Jewel meat wasn't a special preparation ingredient, it was just incredibly difficult to capture. Once you had it, you could eat it however you liked. As chefs, neither Yuki nor Komatsu would pass up the chance to cook such an ingredient. What kind of dish are you planning to make, Chef Yuki? Komatsu asked with curiosity. To be able to cook in the same kitchen as Yuki was incredibly exciting for him. After all, he idolized all-powerful chefs, and Yuki was undoubtedly one of them. Me? I'm thinking of making dumplings. Yuki had already decided on his dish. Jewel meat possessed the flavors of every part of the body, so using it to make dumplings would allow him to create a miniature version of the universe dumpling from Cooking Master Boy. Dumpling? But using the flour here seems like such a waste of the jewel meat. Though Komatsu hadn't handled many high-end ingredients, he knew that a top-tier ingredient needed to be paired with equally high-quality ingredients to fully bring out its flavor. If you used ingredients of a lower grade, it would only have a negative effect, ultimately ruining the taste of the dish. That was why, in the original story, Komatsu mostly used the simplest cooking methods. It wasn't that he didn't know other ways, but he simply didn't have other ingredients to pair with them. I've prepared a suitable ingredient. Komatsu, have you ever heard of Zenmen, all-purpose noodles? Yuki asked as he took out the dough. Zenmen? I've heard of it. They say Granny Setsuno used to sell all kinds of noodle dishes from a cart, and they were all made from Zenmen. But I've never seen it. Komatsu admitted he had heard the stories but had never witnessed it himself. Well, now you have. This is the Zenmen, Yuki said, taking the dough from his gourmet case. He had no intention of making it from scratch, using what he already had was much better. It wouldn't spoil in his storage space, and he just had to make an excuse about taking it out of his bag. So this is Zenmen? It doesn't look that special. Komatsu's eyes went wide, but it was clear that with his current level of perception, he couldn't see what made it so special. Zenmen is a super special preparation ingredient. The raw materials are easy to find, but making it is no simple task. Yuki explained the details to him. After hearing it all, Komatsu's eyes were wide with amazement. He never thought the process was so incredibly difficult, it was far beyond anything he could attempt right now. But at this moment, he was filled with anticipation. What would a dumpling made with Zenmen taste like? Faced with Komatsu's eager gaze, Yuki quickly finished making the wrappers. He didn't even need a rolling pin. With a bit of skillful force, he could press out the dough with his bare hands, creating wrappers as thin as a cicada's wing. He could have made them even thinner, but doing so would have completely sacrificed the texture, which was not what he wanted. Soon, one by one, the dumplings filled with jewel meat were complete. To ensure the best texture, he had minced the meat and seasoned it with the all-purpose seasoning Milk Stardust. After finishing the dumplings, he placed them in a steamer. There was no need to boil water, he just released a blast of high-temperature steam from his own body, using it to cook the dumpling. As expected of Chef Yuki, that's amazing. I wish I could do that someday. Komatsu was incredibly envious of Yuki's culinary skills. But he knew what he had to do, so he got to work. His task was simple: make a steak from the jewel meat. After all, he didn't have Yuki's skills or ingredients. Though there were other ingredients available here at the IGO, he didn't dare use them casually. It wasn't that he was afraid the IGO would charge him. It was because he hadn't handled many high-end ingredients before, and he was afraid of wasting them. So, he chose the simplest and most convenient cooking method. Soon, both their dishes were ready. They were placed under a large cloche and wheeled out by Komatsu to the rooftop. It was night, the perfect time to savor the jewel meat. After all, it could emit a light as bright as the sun. Tasting it at night was the best choice. Here it comes, here it comes. Finally. I wonder what kind of dishes they made with the jewel meat. Toriko stared greedily at the cart Komatsu was pushing, or more accurately, at the massive platter on top of it. The jewel meat is ready. Because of my skill level, I could only pan-fry it into a steak. As for Yuki-san, he made dumplings. As Komatsu finished his introduction, he lifted the cloche. The moment he did, a golden light erupted, dyeing the entire sky gold. This was the natural radiance of the jewel meat itself. Back in the labyrinth, its light had shone through walls of flesh to illuminate the entire maze. And now, it was the same. The cloche couldn't have blocked the light on its own, but Yuki had added a layer of calories to contain it. The light is so bright. I can barely open my eyes. The group exclaimed in unison. The jewel meat was truly terrifying. Although the light is strong, it doesn't hurt your eyes. You can open them. You just need a moment to adjust. Komatsu explained. The group had already seen it when they first captured it, but that was during the day, so they hadn't expected the light to be this exaggerated. He and Yuki had already adapted to it in the kitchen, so they were completely unaffected. He actually made dumplings with jewel meat. Let me have a taste. Coco looked at the dumpling, a theory already forming in his mind. Yuki was no culinary novice, he would surely know about the problem with the wrapper. Since he wants to make it this way, it meant the wrapper was anything but simple. As a jewel meat dumpling went down, Coco's eyes shot wide open. Before him, it was as if the universe itself was evolving. From the Big Bang to the present day, he was completely immersed. When he finally came back to his senses, he discovered that the flavor of the wrapper was in no way inferior to the jewel meat. The fillings were also perfectly seasoned. The dish was flawless. How? What kind of wrapper is this that it can stand up to the jewel meat? After eating the dumplings, everyone's body began to glow. But they couldn't care less about that now. They just wanted to know how Yuki had done it, what kind of ingredient that wrapper was. The wrapper is made from zenmen, so there's no problem with you eating it. As for the seasoning, I used milk stardust. Yuki's one sentence left Toriko and the others completely speechless. The jewel meat itself was incredibly delicious. After eating it, not only did their cells activate, but their bodies were also glowing, and they had tasted such an exquisite dish. They had all heard the legends of zenmen, but none had ever eaten it. After all, they didn't even know when Setsuno sold it. In the original story, before Komatsu, it wasn't sold to the public. It wasn't until after Komatsu had set up his stall that Setsuno finally started selling it. Zenmen and milk stardust. Chef Yuki, you have so many good things. Sunny's body was radiating an intense light, but he wasn't concerned about that now. He was more interested in the high-end ingredients Yuki had brought out. The zenmen was provided by Granny Setsuno. As for the milk stardust, if you go to Milk Mountain, you might have a chance to get some. Yuki explained that since he had brought the stardust to Milk 2, she would surely be using it often. As for why it was only a possibility, that was because Milk 2 would probably eat most of it herself. Milk Mountain, huh? I'll keep that in mind. Toriko nodded. He planned to go there and buy some. After the meal, Yuki's gourmet cells also activated once. As for Toriko and Sunny, they spent the latter half of the meal arguing. The reason was simple, they both wanted to add the jewel meat to their full course menu, which was why they were fighting. Yuki couldn't care less, he just watched the show from the side. To him, this was just a petty squabble. As for who added the ingredient to their menu, that was none of his business. The night passed quickly. After eating the jewel meat, everyone was glowing. Though Yuki could have blocked the light, he felt there was no need. The next morning, Toriko and the others left one by one. Only Rin, Sunny, and Yuki remained. Rin and Sunny often worked here at the headquarters. As for Yuki, he stayed behind because of one particular ingredient. This is the ozone herb, artificially nourished in an environment that simulates the vegetable sky. According to the data analysis, this ozone herb is no different from the ones in the vegetable sky. However, successfully preparing it is no easy task. Mansam explained the various research results to Yuki. The leaves of the ozone herb? I understand. Yuki went right to it. This time, he didn't even need the ingredient to give him a hint, he already knew how to prepare it. The shiso-like leaves were peeled off 2 by 2. Soon, the core of the ozone herb was exposed to the air. How does he make it look so easy? We have to catch it off guard just to succeed. Watching Yuki's fluid movements, Mansam felt he could never learn it. Though he was not weak, he was completely lost when it came to this kind of operation. He could only comfort himself by saying that this was the difference between a gourmet hunter and a chef. The finished ozone herb had only its crystal-like leaves remaining. These leaves also needed to be eaten by 2 people at the same time to be delicious. Otherwise, just like before, they would become incredibly unappetizing. Of course, there were exceptions, powerhouses. In the original story, Setsuno had even pickled the ozone herb, and Jiro had displayed his head-splitting technique. To put it bluntly, it was about using extreme speed to prevent the ozone herb from reacting. If it didn't have time to react, it wouldn't rot and wither. Yuki wanted to try Jiro's and the others' method. His current strength was quite high, so the ozone herb probably wouldn't have any reaction. He went into action. The next second, his head became a blur of afterimages. One on the right, one on the left. He ate the ozone herb directly. But this time, he discovered that his cells didn't activate. They only gave him a small level boost. At this point, he roughly understood. It was because his cell level had become too high. Although the cell level and the level gained from eating were counted separately, the problem now was that the level he had gained from eating was too high. So even a peculiar ingredient like this couldn't satisfy his gourmet cells. In his view, to activate his cells again, he would need even rarer, higher-level ingredients. Chapter 158, Journey to the Gourmet Desert, a region of constant war. High-level ingredients were rare in the human world. Right now, Yuki had two potential locations in mind. The first was the Gourmet Pyramid, and the second was the former Biotope one. The Gourmet Pyramid was once the kingdom of the red nitro. It even contained a large number of them in a dormant state. These red nitro were quite tragic. For some unknown reason, they had fallen into a deep sleep, and in the end, they were eaten by their own kind, by Chi-Chi. At that time, Chi-Chi had eaten his own kin out of desperation to go and support Toriko and the others. He knew that cannibalism among the nitro had great side effects, but at the time, he couldn't afford to care. And in the final battle, Chi-Chi did play a huge role. After eating them, he went to the battlefield and successfully rescued Toriko and the others, though the price was that his own body couldn't hold up. The Gourmet Pyramid contained a large number of special preparation ingredients, and even a super special preparation ingredient like the salamander sphinx. Most critically, it also held the cookbook left by the golden chef, Gigi. Though it was written in the nitro language, as long as one could hear the voice of ingredients, one could roughly understand its meaning. This book would be very useful for him, it could improve his culinary skills. As for the former Biotope one, its danger level was much higher than the Gourmet Pyramids. And there was a wolf fire dragon that he wasn't sure he could handle. After all, that thing was from the movie, and creatures from movies generally have inflated power levels. There was also the mysterious Jirim, whose strength was not weak either. So, after thinking it over, Yuki decided against going to the former Biotope one for now. It was better to improve his strength first and then consider these problems. With that thought, he made his decision: he would go to the Gourmet Desert. At this point in time, Joie shouldn't have gone to the Gourmet Pyramid yet. It takes a month to get there by cable car? I don't have that kind of time to waste. Yuki arrived at the city closest to the Gourmet Desert. To get there, you had to take a cable car. And when they said cable car, they meant one that had entire buildings and villas hanging from it. The Gourmet Desert was in a very special location, right in the center of the desert. But its edges were plagued by massive sandstorms. A normal person entering would be gone in no time. So, this massive cable car was built. It connected the central area of the Gourmet Desert with the nearest city. A one-way trip took a month. It had to be said, the various man-made wonders in the world of Toriko were truly incredible. The sheer scale of this massive cable car was unbelievable, yet the human world had still managed to build it. Yuki naturally wouldn't take the cable car. A month one-way, Toriko, Zebra, and Komatsu had taken it and wasted a lot of time. He planned to fly there himself. That way, it would be much faster. By flying, he soon arrived at the city in the desert. But the city didn't look very good. The reason was simple: it was still in the midst of war. There were many countries in the desert, and not all of them were members of the IGO. So, war was constant here. In the original story, after Zebra was released from prison, these countries were forced to temporarily cease fire and join forces to confront him. The main reason was Zebra himself. He was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. He looked fierce and unapproachable, but when faced with people from poor, war-torn regions, he would choose to help them. As for those who got in his way, they naturally wouldn't have a good time. There was no need for any scruples when dealing with these non-member nations. The IGO wouldn't interfere. Zebra was arrested mainly because he had driven dozens of dangerous species to extinction. If you asked Yuki, dangerous species that had no positive effects whatsoever were better off being wiped out. Keeping them around would only bring trouble and harm. What bad luck, to run into a war. Yuki shook his head. He didn't plan to meddle. If he ran into it, he would do something. If he didn't, he wouldn't go looking for trouble. The reason he would act if he saw it was because he wasn't so cold-blooded as to watch innocent people die and do nothing. The reason he wouldn't seek it out was because there were too many injustices in this world. He couldn't manage them all. And even if he did, how would he manage it? Directly kill the leaders of these warring regions? Then what? What happens after that? Ichiria had absolute strength, but why did the IGO he created still have to cater to the leaders of these countries? It wasn't that he was afraid of them. It was because he knew very well that these people could manage their own countries. As long as these member nations were stable, it was the best for the common people. Otherwise, with his military power, he could have just conquered all the countries and unified them. Conquest and governance were two different things. Yuki didn't know the first thing about governance, so he wouldn't actively provoke such matters. To get to the gourmet pyramid, Toriko and Zebra had rented a water storage camel because it was difficult for them to carry large amounts of supplies. These camels could carry a lot, making it easier for them to move. But Yuki didn't need one. He had everything he needed in his storage space. And he didn't need any special clothing to withstand the harsh environment. His gourmet cells would adapt to everything. He also needed to adapt to this environment because similar environments existed in the gourmet world, and quite a few of them. If he didn't adapt now, it would be very dangerous when he got there. Dangerous species? Since I've seen them, I might as well lend a hand. On his way to the gourmet pyramid, Yuki passed through some villages. These villages were not having a good time. Not because armies had entered them, but because an enemy nation had released biological weapons here. These biological weapons were powerful, dangerous species. Though their capture levels weren't very high, they had an extremely strong desire for destruction. This was the definition of a dangerous species. It brought no benefit to nature or humanity, only harm. Since he had seen them, Yuki naturally took action and killed them. After finishing them off, he continued on his way. He went straight into the depths of the gourmet desert. The temperature here was constantly rising. A normal person staying here would be like being in an oven, they would be dead in minutes. But Yuki's gourmet cells were constantly adapting to the environment. As his cells adapted, he gradually stopped feeling the intense heat. The moisture in his body wouldn't evaporate quickly. Everything felt as if he had returned to a normal area. This was the power of his gourmet cells. Anyone else's might need a lot of time to adapt, but for him, it was simple. His adaptability was far stronger than others. He also encountered many beasts along the way, but in front of him, they were nothing. And he had concealed his aura the entire way, so they couldn't even detect him. Just like that, he arrived at the gourmet pyramid. The so-called gourmet pyramid was actually a massive city. This city was built by the Red Nitro who lived here back then. But as the Red Nitro went into dormancy, this place became a ruin, buried under a large amount of sand, with only a small spire left. This spire was actually the top of the tallest building in the city. There was only one path into the gourmet pyramid. In the original story, Zebra had used his echolocation map to walk in. One wrong step and you would fall into the surrounding quicksand. That single path was actually the outer wall of the city. It was the only way to the gourmet pyramid. Yuki had flown in, so he didn't need to worry about such things. Upon entering the gourmet pyramid, he found it was like a giant maze. Yuki wouldn't follow the rules and walk through it. He just violently broke through. As for whether it would be destroyed, no one came here anyway, and Joie would destroy it later, so there was no need to preserve it. Along the way, he also encountered many special preparation ingredients. These were all raised by the red nitro back then. But after the red nitro became a thing of the past, these creatures had multiplied on their own in the city. This place had now become a paradise for these ingredients. Yuki just used knocking on them. After all, the ingredients here were, at the very least, special preparation ingredients. Any mistake in the preparation method would make them taste incredibly bad. And the appearance of the ingredients here was hard to describe. In the anime, their appearances were beautified. In the manga, they were ferocious and strange. Some of them looked so bizarre that he couldn't even bring himself to eat them. So, he had no intention of capturing that portion. The capture level of these special ingredients wasn't high, at most around 50 to 60. A level like that couldn't activate his gourmet cells, but if the quantity was enough, it could still raise his cell level quite a bit. The cell level was key. No matter how strong his actual combat power was, it was still based on his cell level. It was similar to the scions in the world of Dragon Ball. No matter how strong they were after transforming, the multiplier was based on their base combat power. The higher the base, the stronger the transformation. Yuki was the same, which was why he had come here. After harvesting a large number of ingredients, he finally arrived at one of his destinations, the place where Gigi's cookbook was stored. It recorded the preparation methods for various ingredients. Though he couldn't quite understand the text, by listening to the voices of the ingredients, he could roughly read its contents. When cooking, the temperature and the position of the roasting need to be paid attention to. Otherwise, the roasted ingredient will not only have a bad taste but also a terrible texture. Yuki looked at the contents recorded on it. At this moment, he even began to substitute these contents into the text, trying to reverse engineer the meaning of the nitro language. After all, he might need to use the nitro language when he went to the gourmet world later. Though this cookbook wouldn't allow him to completely learn all the characters of the red nitro race, learning a rough idea was enough. He could also go to the 3 great chefs to learn, but he had no relationship with them. They were on good terms with Ichiryu, which was why they had helped Toriko and the others in the original story. Otherwise, getting help from the red nitro was almost impossible. After reverse engineering some of the text, Yuki put the cookbook away and then opened a sarcophagus. Inside lay a dormant red nitro. A pity. I don't know what the effects of these red nitro are. Though strictly speaking, all the creatures in this world are ingredients, I can't hear their voices. Yuki glanced at it and then paid it no more mind. He found that even after releasing the limits of his ki, he still couldn't hear them speak. He wasn't sure what the consequences of eating them would be. In the original story, Zebra and the others were stopped when they wanted to eat them. The only ones who had eaten nitro were Enio, Chichi, and Jiro. As for whether the 8 kings had eaten them, he wasn't sure. But in the original story, the Monkey King didn't eat pear, nitro, even after seriously injuring it, so he probably hadn't. The only human who had eaten them was Jiro, and the end result was that he had become a living appetite demon. Even the blue nitro hadn't seen such a thing. If it could directly increase his strength, he wouldn't mind eating them. But he wasn't sure if he would become neither human nor ghost after eating them. After all, though the fully unsealed Jiro became a young man, in the process, he looked as strange as could be, no different from a monster. Yuki had many ways to get stronger, but he really didn't want to touch the nitro race without being able to hear the voice of the ingredient. As for Toriko and the others eating Chi-Chi's flesh in the end, that was because Chi-Chi had actively let them eat it. And at that time, he had also used a cooking utensil to process it. So, it was uncertain whether it needed to be processed before eating. In short, unless absolutely necessary, it was best not to touch the flesh of the nitro. No longer paying attention to the dormant red nitro, Yuki went directly to find the strongest creature here. The salamander sphinx, with a capture level of over 90. In the human world, a creature of this level, approaching 100, was quite rare. The cola within its body was also his target. Chapter 159, Rapidly Improving Culinary Skills, A New Growth Bait. Deep within the gourmet pyramid, Yuki finally found it. The salamander sphinx was once a creature kept by the red nitro, but after they fell into their deep slumber, its life had become difficult. The sphinx itself wasn't an ingredient. The true prize was its tears, a cola known as mellow cola, with a capture level exceeding 90. This was the very same cola that Zebra had placed on his full course menu. Every so often, he would travel to the gourmet pyramid to collect it. For the salamander sphinx, this was a blessing. It was a super special preparation ingredient. It couldn't release its tears on its own, and a normal person couldn't make it happen either. The process was incredibly intricate, requiring a series of strikes, a full-body massage, to put it simply, where the force, position, and technique all had to be perfect. A single mistake would lead to failure, and no cola would be produced. In the original story, Toriko and Zebra had to expend every last calorie they had just to release the tears. They were so drained that they had to resort to autophagy, the desperate act of an appetite demon consuming its host, just to recover enough energy to defeat the awakened red nitro. Autophagy was a special technique available only to those who had awakened their appetite demon. It allowed for a near-instant full recovery of energy, but it came with a terrible price. If you didn't replenish the consumed energy with enough food afterward, you would die on the spot. The fact that it took Toriko and Zebra draining their entire energy reserves to release the mellow cola spoke to the immense difficulty of the preparation. Even knowing the method, very few could actually pull it off. For the salamander sphinx, releasing its tears was a relief. Since it couldn't do so on its own, the cola would continuously build up in its eyes, causing immense discomfort. Roar, 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 roar. Upon spotting Yuki intruding on its territory, the salamander sphinx let out a furious roar. It was the ruler of this place, and it would not suffer another creature to enter its domain. Quiet down, kitty. I'm here to help you. As Yuki spoke, his aura exploded outwards. A terrifying pressure slammed down on the salamander sphinx. Though the sphinx was powerful and would normally be resistant to intimidation, Yuki's presence was simply on another level. Even with its partial immunity, it couldn't withstand his aura. The ferocious expression on the sphinx's face instantly melted into one of terror. Its massive body slumped to the ground like a frightened cat. Now, wasn't that easier? Yuki said, pulling out the cookbook he'd acquired. He flipped to the page on the salamander sphinx, and after reading the information, he quickly mastered the preparation method. And so, he began to give the massive creature a full-body massage. Once the process began, the sphinx realized that Yuki was trying to release the tears from its body. Its expression immediately shifted to one of joyous anticipation. After all, ever since the red nitro here had fallen into their slumber, it hadn't been able to release its tears. The discomfort had been unbearable. In the original story, the sphinx had initially fought back against Toriko and Zebra. They had used their own combat techniques to perform the massage, and the sphinx, not knowing their intentions, had naturally defended itself against their attacks. But once it realized they were trying to help, it had given up its resistance. After a full-body massage, a stream of cola trickled from the sphinx's eyes. But this wasn't Yuki's target, it was just the dregs that had accumulated over a long, long time. While the creature was reveling in the initial relief, Yuki pulled out a massive barrel to collect the cola. A moment later, a torrent of mellow cola gushed out like a fountain. Yuki quickly guided the stream, ensuring every drop fell into the massive barrel. He wasn't like Toriko and Zebra, who had let it spill all over the ground and then slurped it up after rolling around in it. He collected the cola, and because it had been building up for so long, the final amount was enough to fill several 50-meter swimming pools. The barrel was custom-made. In this era, a barrel hundreds of meters wide was nothing, you could even get one several thousand meters tall if you wanted. It was a good thing this place was so spacious, and the city so large. Otherwise, there would have been no room for such a massive container. With its tears finally released, the salamander sphinx was much more comfortable. It lay before Yuki like a giant house cat, all traces of its earlier malice gone. Before, it had seen him as an invader trying to steal its territory. But now, it understood that Yuki, like the red nitro of old, was here to help it release its long-accumulated tears. And his overwhelming aura had earned its respect. It was now completely friendly. "I've helped you release the cola. If all goes well, someone else will come to help you again after some time," Yuki said. Just in case, he carved the method for obtaining the cola onto a nearby wall, writing out the steps in human language. "Protect this wall. It's the method for releasing your tears. Anyone who comes here and sees it will understand what to do." After saying his goodbyes, Yuki left. Though the Sphinx was sad to see him go, it didn't follow. This was its home. While Yuki's presence had been powerful enough to command its respect, that didn't mean it had submitted completely. It just didn't dare to bare its fangs at him. Before leaving, Yuki tasted the cola. It was truly exceptional. The carbonation was intense, feeling as if it were exploding in his throat. But at the same time, it caused no harm. He could clearly feel that while the sensation was powerful, it was just the stimulating feeling of carbonation. It didn't actually hurt his throat. All in all, the mellow cola was an excellent ingredient. And it had also triggered another cell activation for him. After leaving the gourmet pyramid, Yuki settled down in the gourmet desert for a while. He planned to first study the cookbook and consume all the ingredients he had captured. As he deciphered the book, his culinary skills continued to improve. The various ideas and experiences recorded within were the true treasures. The methods for preparing specific ingredients were secondary. This was a book summarized by the Golden Chef, Gigi. As a Nitro, his lifespan was infinite, giving him countless eons to study all kinds of cuisine. If it weren't for the fact that he was pure appetite, lacking certain things that humans possessed, his culinary skills would have long surpassed even Frozie's. It had to be said, in this world, humanity was a uniquely blessed existence. Even appetite demons would only parasitize human gourmet cells. Other creatures might have a higher starting point than humans, but their ultimate growth potential wasn't as absurd. In a sense, humanity's potential was truly limitless. Though only a very few reached that point, it was still incredible. The things Gigi had summarized were the pure essence of his craft. Many of them were incredibly useful to Yuki. So, he took this cookbook very seriously. In the end, he stayed in the gourmet desert for over a month. During that time, he used one large bait. The ingredient he got this time was still somewhat useful, but its effectiveness was diminishing. Yuki could only sigh helplessly. Though the large bait had been upgraded once, his own growth rate was clearly much faster. It seemed the catches from the large bait were once again becoming useless to him. I see, so there's another level between Transcendent Class and God Chef. It's a transitional rank, but the system still recognizes it. After more than a month, Yuki had completely absorbed the contents of Gigi's cookbook. His culinary skills had advanced tremendously, reaching a new level entirely. At this stage, his cooking was in no way inferior to Granny Setsuno's. And this level was also recognized by the system, which rewarded him with a new growth bait. This was a pleasant surprise. He had thought he would only get another growth bait after becoming a God Chef, but he never expected to get one for this intermediate rank. He used the growth bait immediately. The catch this time were the last two of the 5 growth-type senses. Now, his 5 senses were complete, and they had once again been upgraded along with his culinary level. His sense of touch had grown to the point where his hair could now extend for 10 kilometers, and the strength and hardness of each strand were greatly enhanced. His other senses had also undergone a qualitative leap. And most critically, so had his gourmet cells. His cell level had once again increased due to this rank up, an improvement completely independent of eating ingredients. The boost this time was more horrifying than any ingredient he had eaten before. Yuki found his strength had grown to an almost absurd degree, but he still couldn't determine his exact level. He lacked a point of reference. He didn't have the experience of Setsuno and the others. Every time his culinary skills improved, all his growth-type abilities would improve along with them. That was the most terrifying part. A pity that improving his cooking was now incredibly difficult. He was lucky to have Gigi's book this time. Otherwise, to reach this level, it would have probably taken him several, or even dozens of times longer. Since my cooking has improved, it's time to head to my next destination. Yuki planned his next move. The destination was the Land of Healing, Life. This place was the headquarters of the revivers. After the incident in Wool Jungle, Yuki wanted to learn their techniques. Otherwise, his actions would have too great an impact on the natural environment. It was only because he wanted to get the cookbook first that he had gone to the Gourmet Pyramid. He had now mostly deciphered the book. He had even recorded a video of himself translating its contents. The reason for doing so was, naturally, to give it to Granny Setsuno. Upon returning to Gourmet Town, Yuki went straight to Setsuno's diner without stopping. To his surprise, it was open for business today. But the customers weren't Toriko and his friends, they had already been here. This time, it was a different group of guests. Yuki had no interaction with them and went directly into Setsuno's kitchen. "Ms. Nono, who is that person?" He was able to walk straight into Ms. Setsuno's kitchen. Seeing Yuki enter so casually, a few of the dining guests were completely baffled. "The one who just went into the kitchen is Mr. Yuki," Nono said with a smile. The moment she said his name, the others knew who he was. Although Yuki wasn't on the chef rankings and thus wasn't famous, anyone who knew about Setsuno's company would know that it now had a special consultant position. This position held great power, and the dividends were very high. Chapter 160, Setsuno Stunned to Numbness, Journey to the Land of Healing. "You're back? You were at the Gourmet Pyramid for quite a long time this time." Setsuno was a little surprised to see Yuki appear in her kitchen. She knew he had gone there, but he had been away for far too long. He hadn't taken the cable car, so the 2-month round trip didn't apply. In her view, with his strength, a round trip shouldn't have taken long at all. If he was fast, he could have been back within a day. Capturing the Melocola wasn't easy, but that was only for the standards of the human world. For powerhouses like them, it wasn't difficult. And the method for capturing it was already known to the powerhouses of the human world. The Salamander Sphinx didn't only exist in the Gourmet Pyramid, there were others, though they were extremely rare. I had some other gains at the Gourmet Pyramid, so I stayed a little longer. With that, Yuki took the book out of his backpack. "HM? You found this book? A pity we don't know what's written in it." Setsuno was surprised to see the book. She had been to the Gourmet Pyramid before and had discovered it then. But after studying it for a while, she found she couldn't make much sense of it. While she could understand the meaning of some of the images, fully comprehending it was difficult. This was the difference between being able to hear the voice of ingredients and not. For Komatsu, it was easy to understand. But for her, she was completely lost. She was very frustrated. Since she couldn't understand it, she had only memorized the parts she could vaguely decipher and then put the book back. After all, taking it with her was useless. She never thought Yuki would bring the book back with him. "It's not a pity. As you know, I can hear the voices of ingredients. I could also hear the voice of this book. Perhaps the person who wrote it used a material for the book that had this property in mind," Yuki explained. He had discovered that the book was made from a special kind of plant. That was why he could understand what was written on it. It had to be said, Gigi's wisdom from his long life was truly something else. "You heard the voice of the ingredients? Which means you understood everything written on it?" Hearing this, even the usually calm Setsuno couldn't remain composed. She looked at Yuki with astonishment. She was finding that as long as he was around, no matter how calm she tried to be, she would always end up with this shocked expression. At this point, she was becoming numb to the feeling. She knew just how valuable this book was. She had only understood a tiny fraction of it. But that small part had already given her new insights into preparing various special preparation ingredients, making her research much easier. Now, Yuki could read the entire book. This left her completely floored. "That's right, I understood it all. Thanks to this book, my culinary skills have improved a lot. I've recorded my interpretation of the contents on video. You can watch it when you have time. Yuki placed a tablet he had recorded the video on onto the table. I understand. Thank you so much. This favor is no less than the previous ones, Setsuno said with a sigh. She had thought that after she had established a good relationship with him through the century soup and the extension of her life, it would be her taking care of him. And she had indeed helped him with many things. After all, she felt the favor he had done her was too great, these small things weren't enough to repay it. While Yuki hadn't asked her to repay him, friendship between people was a two-way street. If she took advantage of him, their friendship would naturally have problems. Yuki's talent in every aspect was the strongest she had ever seen. There was no way she wouldn't want to build a good relationship with such a person. But the result was that he was constantly bringing them pleasant surprises. The Woolstar rice before, and now the interpretation of this cookbook. All in all, she felt the debt she owed him was only getting bigger. Don't be so formal. The things you and Jiro have taught me are invaluable. Jiro even taught me all his knocking techniques without reservation. Yuki remarked that since the two of them had taught him without holding anything back, he would naturally think of them when he had something good. After that, Setsuno didn't stop her cooking but continued to prepare her dishes. There were still customers upstairs. She could have stopped her work, or just made a few simple dishes, or even had Nono do it, so she could go and study the cookbook. But she didn't. It had to be said, she was worthy of being a gourmet national treasure. She was also someone who greatly respected the will of the ingredients. So, even with the temptation of the cookbook right there, she temporarily suppressed her curiosity and continued to seriously finish the dishes she had planned before going to study it. Though I've only seen a part of it, I have to say, the things recorded on it are a huge help to me. No, for the next period of time, all company matters will be left to you. I need to seriously study these things. After that, it'll be your turn, Setsuno said. She planned to ignore everything else and seriously study these culinary techniques and knowledge. I understand, master. You can leave it to me. Nono nodded. She usually handled various tasks, so managing the company wasn't a problem. As for whether the people in the company would obey her, that wasn't a concern. If Nono encountered a problem she couldn't handle, a simple word to Setsuno and it would be resolved. By the way, didn't you want to go to the land of healing, life? I've already spoken with Teppei. He's told Yusaku that you'll be visiting. You can go whenever you have time. But it's best to go as soon as possible. Otherwise, you might not be able to find Yusaku in a little while, Setsuno said. The time of the gourmet solar eclipse was getting closer. As a member of Biotope 0th, Yusaku would definitely be summoned. And he had more important things to do after that, reviving one of the 8 menu items, the world's best dessert Earth. Earth needed a massive flower field to grow and mature. After the fruit was harvested, the flower field would wither. Once it withered, to get Earth again, the flower field had to be revived. To this day, the only ones who could revive the flower field, besides the blue nitro and the 3 great red nitro chefs, were Yusaku and Mohayan Sheishai. So, Yusaku would be heading to the 4th continent later to revive the flower field that nurtures Earth. If Yuki went to the land of healing a little later, Yusaku might have already left for Biotope 0th. Though there were still powerful revivers like Teppei and Pukin, they were far inferior to Mohayan Sheishai and Yusaku. I understand. I was planning to go to the land of healing on this trip back. Yuki nodded. He also knew that Yusaku would be summoned to the gourmet world later, so he would go and learn from him now. With his learning ability, it probably wouldn't take long to master that knowledge. For others, mastering knowledge and techniques was the hardest part. But for him, it was the easiest. And all of his growth-type abilities had just been enhanced again. His learning ability had become even stronger. After saying goodbye to Setsuno and Nono, Yuki returned to his residence. While he could go to the land of healing directly, it was already very late, so he decided not to go yet. The next morning, after eating breakfast, he set out. Meanwhile, at Setsuno's diner, Jiro had returned and learned that Yuki had brought another great gift for Setsuno. "So, this cookbook's interpretation is very important to you, Setsu?" Although Jiro also knew some cooking, he was far behind her. "That's right. With this book, and with my extended lifespan, I have a chance to reach Frosi-sama's level." Setsuno's eyes shone as she said this. She had been taught by Frosi. While they had a master-student relationship, strictly speaking, Frosi had never taken any students. That was why she called her Frosi-sama, not master. Setsuno had always seen Frosi as her idol, always hoping to follow in her footsteps and eventually enter the realm of godchef. But her own talent had become a shackle, which had been a source of great sorrow for her. However, Yuki's appearance had changed everything. She still had plenty of time, and with the cookbook deciphered, her hope was reignited. To reach Frosi-sama's level? If you really can, that would be wonderful. Looks like we owe the kid another big one. Jiro was helpless. They hadn't even finished repaying the last favor, and now there was another. He had even taught him his ultimate knocking techniques, but in the end, it felt like he owed more and more. As for the value of his knocking techniques, though it was high, for Jiro, it was also a way to find a suitable successor. Although he had already found a successor in Teppei, who knew what the future held? Teppei had the potential to become a high-level knocking master, but whether he could reach the peak was something even Jiro wasn't sure of. On the contrary, Yuki's potential was even greater than Teppei's. He had a better chance of becoming a peak knocking master. So, his teaching Yuki was partly to repay a favor, and partly to find a suitable heir. So, he had a selfish motive in this matter, which was why he felt he could never fully repay the debt. There's nothing to be done about it. He's always doing something unexpected. Setsuno was also a bit helpless. Yuki's series of amazing feats, one after another, the constant stream of benefits, made it feel unreal to both her and Jiro. But it was the truth, so they could only slowly repay this favor. "I remember the kid was looking for a camping monster, right? I was planning to let him find one himself before, but it looks like I'll have to take a trip to the gourmet world," Jiro said. While there were camping monsters in the human world, they were rare and weak. They wouldn't last in the gourmet world. After entering the gourmet world, even Toriko and the others were constantly changing their camping monsters because different ones had different effects in different regions. That's good. The camping monsters in the human world are too weak. And the kid is very cautious, he doesn't dare to enter the gourmet world yet. Setsuno was a little amused by Yuki's caution. Being cautious is a good thing. After all, we both know what the gourmet world is like. Strictly speaking, you can survive in the gourmet world after your level exceeds 100, the probability of death is frighteningly high. Jiro fully agreed with Yuki's approach. He knew best what the gourmet world was like. Forget the hidden enemies, just the beasts on the surface were terrifyingly strong. If you were unlucky, you might run into the 8 kings right after entering, or other high-level beasts. In the end, Setsuno and Jiro made their decision. Jiro would go to the gourmet world to find a suitable camping monster for Yuki. As for Setsuno, she would continue to study the cookbook. As for Yuki, he had no idea that Jiro was planning to go and catch a camping monster for him. He was already on a private jet to the land of healing. Although he could have gotten there faster on his own, he wasn't in a hurry, so he decided to enjoy life a little. As expected of the land of healing. Just the layout and decoration give one a very warm feeling, Yuki remarked, looking at the land of healing. Everything here gave off a gentle feeling. Just as he stepped out of the jet, butterflies of 2 colors, red and blue, began to flutter around him. These were the specialty of the land of healing, the butterfly therapy. They would detect if a visitor had any injuries or illnesses. That wraps up this part of What If Fishing System in Food Wars World. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Quick reminder. The series What If Transmigrated in Bleach World is now on hold, since we've caught up with the author. So now, I will be using the second most popular among the fanfics on the previous poll as the replacement for the series What If Transmigrated in Bleach World. As such, please vote in the poll and let me know which story you'd like to see next. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.